2021, a year that was dominated by a staggering rise in climate tragedies from east to west. A year so dramatic in US election history, and a year that has left Europe staring at an unprecedented COVID surge yet again. From challenging events like these to a meteoric rise in the popularity of K-pop and K-drama, 2021 is memorable in its own way. I am Charlene Lobo, and on this show, The Global Gamut, Mirror Now takes a look back at the spiral trip the past year has been, starting with the US elections. 2021 gave the United States of America a new president and the first woman vice president. It saw the end of a tumultuous Trump presidency and paved the way for Biden-Harris reign. Here is a quick look at how America witnessed a chaotic presidential transition.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute
the office of President of the United States.
Office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
This is America's day. This is democracy's day. A day of history and hope.
On January 20th, the United States of America got its 46th president and its first woman vice president, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
However, events leading to this day only exposed the deep racial divide in the country. January 6, 2021, a day which will live in infamy. A violent mob of Donald Trump supporters attacked US Capitol in Washington, D.C. to disrupt the joint Congress session that was to formalize Joe Biden's victory. Democrats pushed for Trump's impeachment despite him having less than 2 weeks of his tenure left. However, Trump was acquitted in the U.S. Senate after he secured 57 of the 100 votes in his favor.
But what we saw in that Senate today was a cowardly group of Republicans who apparently have no options because they were afraid to defend their job, respect the institution in which they served. Imagine that it would be vandalized in so many bad ways that I won't even go into here, and that they would not respect their institute, that the president of the Senate.
Within 3 days of taking oath, Biden reversed a key Trump-era decision and U.S. joined Paris Climate Agreement. Biden had a tough task ahead of him. COVID spread through the entire world, with U.S. recording high number of infections.
If you've been fully vaccinated, you no longer need to wear a mask. But if you've not been vaccinated, or if you're getting a 2-shot vaccine, and you've not gotten you only had your first shot, but not your second, or you haven't waited the full 2 weeks after your second shot, you still need to wear a mask.
His policy to mandate vaccination drew massive ire among the conservatives, leading to widespread protests.
We cannot continue the cycle of extending or expanding our military presence in Afghanistan, hoping to create ideal conditions for the withdrawal and expecting a different result. I'm now the 4th United States president to preside over American troop presence in Afghanistan. 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. I will not pass this responsibility on to a 5th. After consulting closely with our allies and partners, with our military leaders and intelligence personnel, with our diplomats and our development experts, with the Congress and the Vice President, as well as with Mr. Ghani and many others around the world, I've concluded that it's time to end America's longest war. It's time for American troops to come home.
Although Biden's approval ratings plummeted over inflation, Afghanistan crisis and immigration crisis, it remains to be seen whether he and Kamala can focus on the things average Americans care about, the increasing cost of living in the United States of America.
When COVID pandemic began in 2020, there was uncertainty. But 2021 saw a new form of the pandemic. There was fear and apprehension as the world saw a huge surge in hospitalization and deaths. Variants of the virus spread havoc in countries that originally escaped the wrath of the first wave. While vaccines slowed down the pace of the spread, vaccine distribution exposed the divide between first world countries and the others.
If 2022 was the year COVID unleashed its devastation, 2021 saw a painful aftermath. The year began with uncertainty as close to 2 million people had lost their lives in 2020. The United Kingdom in particular was struggling after a new and more infectious COVID variant emerged. It was called Alpha, and it soon spread to several countries world over. In US, 6 million cases were recorded in the month of January alone. In fact, several countries which escaped devastation in the first wave couldn't evade the destruction of the second wave. Indonesia in particular witnessed a massive spike in cases and deaths due to the Delta variant. World over, ICUs were overflowing with patients and the dead were cremated or buried in mass burials. The world awaited relief in the form of vaccine. While the first COVID vaccine was administered in the UK in December 2020, massive vaccination across the world only gained pace by June. Cases began to dip gradually. It seemed that everything was getting back to normal. Many nations, in fact, made masks voluntary and restrictions were relaxed. Japan even hosted Olympic Games despite widespread opposition, as the public was skeptical of the claims of a risk-free event. Music concerts were also held with full capacity in America. But it was only momentary. Many nations in Europe have again witnessed a surge in cases due to the latest variant, Omicron. In fact, protests broke out across Europe over new COVID restrictions, with demonstrators opposing curbs against those unvaccinated. It also sparked a huge debate on vaccine mandate worldwide. Now the focus is shifting towards booster doses. However, with several poor countries yet to complete vaccination of its populations, the onus is on world leaders to ensure vaccine equity. Bureau Report, Mirror Now.
As the last US troops departed Kabul in August, Taliban was quick to declare victory. But the country is still reeling under a humanitarian crisis. But how did it come to this? Here's a report. The September 11, 2001 attacks on the United States set off the longest war in the country's history. US troops were deployed in the then Taliban-controlled Afghanistan that granted sanctuary to Al-Qaeda. The US forces overthrew the Taliban but stayed there. "20 years later, the war has ended, but Afghanistan is still in the grip of repetition." On 6th July 2021, almost overnight without notice, the US troops left Bagram airfield, leaving behind a diffident Afghan military. The Taliban launched an offensive and advanced at lightning speed. Provinces fell to the Taliban one after another. With President Ashraf Ghani gone, the Taliban entered Kabul on 15th of August with no resistance. What followed was days of chaos. Countries stepped up evacuations ahead of the August deadline. Desperate people scaled airport walls. Parents passed over babies in the crowd to be rescued. Many even clung to the sides of a moving plane. The catastrophe was punctuated by a terror attack on 26th August outside Kabul airport that killed hundreds, including 13 American troops.
Thank you, Mr. President, for this opportunity to speak.
The crisis became a topic of debate at global platforms. The world showed concern, which critics dubbed as mere play to the gallery. Trade ties and support were cut. It was as if the world had abandoned Afghanistan. By September, the Taliban announced an interim government with an all-male cabinet including wanted terrorists. This was Taliban 2.0, that claimed to be inclusive, but no woman held a senior post in government office. They were banned from TV shows and girls were banned from secondary education. Men and women who disobeyed Taliban rules were executed. Human rights violation, dwindling economy, severe hunger, poverty, and even COVID. The Afghan war is over, but the country is facing its worst humanitarian crisis yet. The devastating effects of climate change is real, and 2021 was witness to that. It was a year when floods and fires made climate change a burning issue for the world. Forest fires, cyclones, tornadoes, and heat waves sounded a red alert for the world.
The year 2021 saw many natural calamities worldwide. Ranging from forest fires, cyclones, tornadoes, and heat waves. Fires intensified in the Brazilian rainforest in August, and Amazon deforestation was at its worst in 15 years. Amazon lost 13,235 square kilometers of rainforest in the 12 months from 2020 to July 2021. That's the most since 2006. While in Australia, wildfire in the northeast of the country was devastating, making some people homeless. In Perth, wildfire destroyed at least 30 homes. Several US states were hit by a series of tornadoes, killing more than 100 in December 2021. Missouri, Kentucky, Mississippi, Illinois were the worst hit.
I'm monitoring the situation very closely since early this morning. This is likely to be one of the largest tornado outbreaks in our history.
Earlier today, I called the governors of the states that have been experiencing severe impacts of the storms, including Arkansas, Illinois, Kentucky, Missouri, as well as Tennessee. What I told all the governors, the federal government will do everything it can possibly do to help.
Super Typhoon Rai crashed into the Philippines' southeastern islands in December, killing more than 30 people and winds flown at the speed of about 195 kilometers per hour. A deadly heat wave slammed Canada this year in June and July, with around record 50 degrees temperature in some of the states. More than 500 people died because of the heat waves in Canada. British Columbia recorded the highest temperature of 49.6 degrees Celsius. The United Nations has warned world leaders to limit global temperatures and cut emissions by 23% by 2030. These adverse weather events are a wake-up call for humanity, a red alert.
Amid a slew of such world-altering events, there were also moments of victory and loss. Visuals that made headlines and changes that have a long-lasting impact. Here's a look at those defining moments of 2021. The year began with a coup in South Asia's Myanmar. On 1st of February, military seized control of the country following a general election, which Aung San Suu Kyi's NLD party enjoyed landslide victory in. The armed forces had backed the opposition, who were demanding a rerun of the vote, claiming widespread fraud. The coup took place as a new session of parliament was set to open. Aung San Suu Kyi, an icon of democracy in the country, was detained. The military general had seized power. All this led to mass protests in Myanmar. The new power leader tried to suppress the protests that led to the deaths of hundreds of people. A beauty contest got ugly in April when the winner of a Sri Lankan beauty pageant, Pushpika De Silva's crown, was snatched on stage. Moments after De Silva concluded her victory walk, the reigning Mrs. World and 2019 Mrs. Sri Lanka, Caroline Jury, did something unexpected. She snatched the crown from Mrs. De Silva's head and awarded it to the first runner-up. Caroline Jury explained that as per pageant rules, a divorced woman cannot hold the title. Tensions between Palestine and Israel had escalated this year in May into the worst violence and led the UN to warn of a full-scale war. It continued until the ceasefire came into effect on May 21st. The Gaza fighting began after weeks of rising Israeli-Palestinian tension in East Jerusalem. It culminated in clashes at a holy site revered by both Muslims and Jews. On 10th May, Hamas began firing rockets after warning Israel to withdraw from the site, triggering retaliatory airstrikes. Thereafter, exchanges intensified and hostilities quickly escalated into the worst violence. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was ousted in June. He was the country's longest-serving Prime Minister, having held office for 12 years. He was Israel's first directly elected Prime Minister. Nationalist leader Naftali Bennett has now replaced Netanyahu. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's weight loss had been the headline of many international dailies in June. The country's main television channel had shown a footage of Kim Jong in a North Korean parade showcasing marching soldiers and workers in hazmat suits. Kim Jong looked visibly slimmer, thus fueling rumors of the North Korean leader's health. This year, Facebook rechristened itself as Meta. It changed the parent company's name as it was battling criticism from the lawmakers and regulators over its market power. Speaking at the company's live streaming event, CEO Mark Zuckerberg said the new name reflected its focus on building the metaverse. The sports world was shocked when one of China's top tennis players, Peng Shuai, disappeared publicly for nearly 3 weeks after she had accused former Vice Premier Zhang Gaoli of sexually assaulting her. Since she posted the accusations on social media, there had been concerns about the tennis star's whereabouts. Many sports stars had raised concerns about Peng Shuai's well-being. Then a video call between the Olympic officials and Peng Shuai surfaced, but even that raised questions as it appeared to be staged. Following this, the Women's Tennis Association suspended all its tournaments in the country. Germany's first female chancellor, Angela Merkel's 16-year era came to an end after German lawmakers elected Social Democrat Olaf Scholz as the new chancellor. Merkel is a former scientist who grew up in communist East Germany. She served alongside 4 US presidents, 4 French presidents, 5 British prime ministers and 8 Italian premiers. Her chancellorship was marked by 4 major challenges: the global financial crisis, Europe's debt crisis, the 2015-16 influx of refugees to Europe, and the COVID pandemic. This was 2021 in rare view. Despite all the barriers, we kept going. And as we step into 2022, we wish our viewers renewed courage for newer challenges. Till then, stay safe and a very happy new year.